Good afternoon, Sarah and Anthony. Welcome to Fun Stars and Found Stars. It is Captain's Log. What is the date today?
14th already.
4th of November, halfway through November already, 2022. People, for context for people who are listening or watching, I think there's lots of people ready to go off to Slush in Helsinki. I talked to a couple of people who were packing their bags this morning, and obviously a number of people have all got back from Web Summit, and we have the very big honour of speaking to Sarah Barber, who is from Jenson Funding Partners, who's taken time out of her busy diary on this Monday afternoon to tell us more about Jenson. And first of all, as is always the case, what we like to do is set a bit of context as to how people have got into the roles that they're doing. So Sarah, obviously we're not going back to kindergarten here or primary school, but we haven't quite got that amount of time, I suppose. Well, in my case, it'd be a long time. But we always love to hear how, especially when it's a fund, how the fund was created, how you became interested in this particular area of investment. And clearly, we met back in my Bloomberg days, which contextually was 2012 to 2017. So we've known each other and interacted with each other on and off for a good, I'd probably say 8 or 10 years. So, So I suppose over to you, Sarah, and welcome to the show.
Well, thanks ever so much, Chris, for having me. So how did I start in this? I am an accountant by background. I trained with Deloitte many, many moons ago. And after sort of going through various places within Deloitte, decided that actually I wanted to branch out, and I had a great opportunity to work as an interim finance director, and started working with smaller businesses. And from that, worked with Paul Jenkinson at Jenson Solutions, which is an outsourced finance director business. And we were working with a lot of early stage businesses who just couldn't get funding. And so in 2012, when SEIS came about, we were working with Foresight. They were interested in SEIS, but it was too small for them. And we discussed with them how we could collaborate and come up with a fund. So that's what we did. So that's how the fund came about.
Just jumping in there a bit, Sarah. Foresight, for people who might not know who Foresight are, I think that they're a bigger fund. Is that correct?
Yes, a much bigger fund. And yeah, they were just interested in this space. So because I think everybody can see the benefits of investing in early stage businesses, but also everybody knows that it's really hard working with early stage businesses. So it's who are you going to find to do that? But I mean, I love working with early stage businesses. So that's why we got into doing this.
Okay. And I believe you are now the CEO of the fund.
Am.
Correct.
I am.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Congratulations. When did that happen, Sarah? Was that recently?
So that was quite early on.
Okay.
So what was that, 2014, 2015? Okay. Yeah, it was about 2014, because that's when we decided we were going to do the EIS fund. So I sort of got in and sort of set that up as a follow-on strategy.
Right. And in terms of the actual business itself, is Paul still involved? It's a team of 6, 8, 10 more. And
so we have a team of there's 7 of us within the team who are actively running the business. We have 5 sort of partners who sit on the board. Paul is one of those partners, so still has an involvement, but very much from the day-to-day running of the business. There's myself. Jeffrey Forstin, who is the Chief Investment Officer. So he runs with all the deal flow, and sort of looking after the portfolio companies and the strategic side of that. And then we have we've got a great team sitting there looking after investor relations and all the normal things.
And if I was a founder and I was thinking, okay, we know how some founders work. When they just want to start fundraising, they kind of do their whole Crunchbase download, and they get 1,000 investors, and they're kind of like, oh my god, how do I start? Who do I contact? So if they were to sort of listen to this podcast and find out more about Jenson Funding Partners, they would knock on your door because you're SEIS and EIS. And is within that, is there a mantra of a particular industry type? Because I also know that you're extremely active. I think I read somewhere that you're one of the most active.
Over 125 companies with 28 follow-on funding rounds.
Wow, thank you, Anthony. But I think you're one of the UK's most active investors at this stage, I believe.
So we've invested, as Anthony quite rightly pointed out, in over 125 businesses. We try and invest in SEIS somewhere between 10 and 15 companies a year. And we try and keep it at that sort of level so that we can actually work with those businesses, because we don't just invest, we actually sort of have an involvement with those businesses afterwards. We're quite busy, we're quite active, very active.
Could imagine.
Is there a kind of a vertical split? Are you focused on SaaS, AI, clean tech, climate tech? Obviously, there's a lot of focus in the current market in 2022 in sustainability and ESG. Could you give us a bit of flavour there, Sarah, on maybe some recent investments and where they may have been in?
Yeah, so we're as an early stage investor. I think our purpose is predominantly to invest in a cross section of companies. The people that come to us, they've got the expertise, that they know the sector, and obviously we do our due diligence to make sure they know that. What they're possibly lacking is the understanding of the funding cycle. So how to start as an early stage, how to grow your business, what you need to be doing, what you need to be thinking about. So that's very much what we believe that we offer into that. So there's no sector specifics that we go into. We do like to invest in tech-enabled businesses, and by that I mean tech has to form part of the growth of the business. So that's very much sort of fundamental to the growing of the business. But yeah, there is no specific sector in that. In terms of sustainability, we're seeing a lot more of that. There's definitely a trend for businesses coming to us that have that kind of leaning. But the sort of the way we look at businesses hasn't changed at all. We very much make sure that we're looking at businesses that can really define what the problem is, really define what their solution is to that problem, and really define the market that applies to. So they're the sort of key things that we'll be looking for.
The most recent investment, what was that into, Sarah?
So yeah, we're currently deploying our SEIS tranche. So we did our first close in July. So we've done 2 companies into that tranche, and I wouldn't like to choose out of either of them. So the 2 were Skooma Water, which offers a water filter essentially that generates minimal waste while providing its consumers with electrolyte enhanced water based on their personal needs. So unlike I don't know, a water filter you've got, it might leave microplastics in there, but it will also take out the nutrients, whereas this one will leave sort of the nutrients but take out all the bad bits. And then the other one was Violet Ultra, and they've got a smart switch which essentially provides quick and easy control of all your smart home systems. So we're going into this era of having lots of different sort of smart devices around. So this just all puts it in a nice place.
IoT in reality. So and like those two examples just spring out to me. Not afraid of I suppose a hardware investment, and not afraid of probably a B2C investment. Is that right?
Both big funding gaps in the UK. So
yeah. We're not afraid of investing in a diverse portfolio, and I think that's what we're trying to offer, is not just investing into the same thing. I think, as I've sort of said, the early stage business is, if you pinpoint sort of too early, you can really sort of pigeonhole yourself into sort of trying to run those businesses, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're very much trying to give these businesses the leg up to the next stages, and so we're not worried about hardware, but we wouldn't invest 10 to 15 companies in hardware.
No.
We'd make sure it's very, very diversified.
And I suppose, though, in the case of those two businesses, there's tech being built, they're tech enabled, there's possibly product market fit, there's maybe early revenues, customers, good pipeline. Obviously UK only investments, UK
focus at the moment, but very much a view to going international with it as well.
It's interesting.
And
what, just EU or global?
Well, let's see how they get on, but let's start off in the EU. EU and US tend to be the sort of sweet spots for internationalizing at the moment, but for both of those companies, I think there's B2C element, but there's B2B2C in it as well. So great businesses, and the people who are running them, I think I'd probably need to really enforce that. The teams that are running these are super smart, know their stuff, and they're great sort of teams that we've invested in as well. We'll be launching a fund specifically focused on that area.
Net zero or net zero focus, is it? Or not?
It will be a transition to net zero and enabling that transition. So it's, and again, what we're focusing on again is the very, very early stage innovative growth companies that sit within that sector. So it's very much working on looking at companies, because we're seeing a lot of companies coming through in that area that don't necessarily meet our criteria for SEIS. For various reasons. It could be
some of them are big projects, aren't they, that are kind of like, if they succeed, they will be fantastic and could really have an impact, a massive impact on whichever particular segment of the industry. But to get to succeed, it's going to need a 2, 3, or maybe even a 5-year runway to get to the point of having that impact, which obviously doesn't play into that SEIS type scenario. Yeah,
absolutely. So but we're just seeing so many of them that it's a real huge opportunity to get those companies off the ground. And again, at the early stages, that's who we are, is early stage growth innovative companies. And so we thought we're seeing so many of them, if we need to do something about this. So yes,
that's good news.
Well, let's hope so. Watch this space. Watch this space. I mean, we're really excited about it. We've got some great advisors on board, and yeah, we think that, you know, between the advisors and the experience that we've got in the early stage investment cycle, we think this will be a good thing. You know,
and I agree with you. I think it's definitely an area that I'm wrong when I'm saying the trend is the trend. It is clearly, there are some fantastic technologies, businesses, founders, opportunities in this segment that, again, that's the opportunity. There is a dearth of, in my mind, specialized funds, right, for the early stage founder that is in net zero or moving to net zero, or however you classify it. And there's a great match there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think a lot of the companies that you will see get invested at a later stage, they'll have had, you know, friends and family networks. They'll understand where to go to get the funding in the first place. Whereas I think if we can get in there, I think you'll see better companies coming through, and that's what we believe. So yeah.
So if I look at the process of those businesses getting investment, they have approached you, or your network has suggested Jenson to the founders. They then it's then deck, DD, three or four meetings, and then a term sheet in a period of a couple of months, maybe 3 months, or is that the right?
You need to come and talk to our founders. That's exactly it.
We've been doing this a long time, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, we can move fairly quickly. We've got a very standard set of documents. So when we see people, we do like to see them, you know, 3 or 4 times. Absolutely. We've had some companies we've worked with for 18 months, you know, making sure that what we're investing in is the right thing. So, and we've had people come to us and we've said, well, no, that doesn't quite fit with the market. They'll go away. That doesn't quite fit because you haven't got the right people on board. They'll go away and they'll come back to us with those people. So it's not, sometimes it can be 18 months, sometimes it can be 6 weeks. But yeah, we like to spend time with all of them. As I said, you know, this is a relationship. We're going to be with these people for a long time. So
yeah, I was going to expand on the mention of you're quite hands-on. How's that pan out then? Is that, you know, you're a member of a person's on the board, or are you know, do you have quarterly meetings with them? What's that in practice, Sarah?
Yeah, so it's a number of things. We do have board rights, but we like to take a proactive approach rather than a controlling approach. So we tend to just be a board observer. A lot of the companies that come on board, they're not even at that stage of having sort of really formal board meetings. So we will just set up monthly calls with them, and you know, we'll work through with them how to get to the stage of getting to a board, because you know that's crucial as they're growing. So that's one of the things we'll do with them. So there'll be monthly calls. We also do things like founder forums. So on a monthly or every couple of months, we'll have a founder forum that might talk about value proposition. It might talk about exits. It might talk about alternative sources of financing, venture debt, what your board structure should look like. So, you know, a real wide variety of things. And that does 2 things. It, number one, encourages people to come and listen to those subjects because they're quite important to them at this stage. But it also gives everybody a chance to actually meet each other as founders and portfolio companies. So and we encourage people to talk to each other. We've got a WhatsApp group. We've got, you know, that is managed by our team, but it's very much for the portfolio companies to talk to each other, find out where they can go and hire somebody, or find, just those little things that you wake up and think, I just don't know the answers to that. They can come to us and we can give them what we know. But if they go to the rest of the portfolio, they've got sort of 30 odd people that will also be able to answer them. So it's a really good way of the portfolio companies working together to do that. We do monthly bulletin, we've got discounts. So lots and lots of different things, but it's very much a proactive approach rather than we're trying to tell you what to do approach.
Yeah. You go, Anthony.
No, I mean, just kind of on that topic, I'm sure there must be people wondering, the scale of what you guys are working on. How are you guys managing that? Because 120 portfolio companies that are all having monthly calls and then investing into 12 or 13 new companies a year, right? You guys must have some masterful techniques to be able to manage all of this workload.
So in terms of that, so as much as we've invested in 125, I think it's a couple more than that now, but we've invested in that number of businesses. Some have already gone. So I would say we've probably got, and we've also exited some of those companies. So I would say we've probably got between 60 and 70 active companies at the moment. We split up the calls with those companies, and they're half-hour calls. We have a very sort of
is it a strict half hour as well?
No. I mean, it's strict half hour if I've got somebody afterwards. But if somebody needs to speak for a little bit longer, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, so we'll sit down and work with them. But the way that we really manage all of this is because we've got a great team that works with us. So if anything comes out of that, that we feel that we need to do something about, then we've got a great team behind us that will help us sort of find whatever we need to do. So yeah, that's really how we manage it. It works. And I mean, the other thing I would say is, not all of them are going to succeed, and that's just a fact. But what having these calls every month actually means is that where something doesn't quite go right, we can manage that process as well, because actually working with the people when things aren't going so right is just as important, because it's not necessarily anything that they've done that has happened that's making this happen. It could be market forces. It could be, it's something's just, the economics just aren't working. So at that point, you've got to make sure that you're getting out sooner rather than later. So, it's very important to make sure we're sort of spending time on that as well. And it's also being incredibly clear, I think, about what we can help with and what we can't help with. And the things that we can't help with, making sure that we're pointing in the right direction for the things that we can't help with. So, it's a signposting. It's that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Interested, because there's a bit of a trend at the moment with some of the VCs that we talk to regularly through the nature of the advisory work or events that I run, and there seems to be like it's all on January, because at the moment a lot of VCs are, well, from what I'm hearing from different people, and this might not or might be the case for Jenson, but they're very hyper focused on portfolio managing their existing portfolio at the moment. And January, the magical January, they keep saying, new year, new start, will be when they not just deploying because it's a new year, but they have to deploy because they've got maybe the SEIS running into April, and it's like, spring madness. And so if you could add a bit of context there as well, Sarah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, we have an approach where, so with the SEIS fund, that process is happening throughout the year in terms of deployment. So that's going on all the time. EIS does tend to be more tax year end driven. But because we know those companies as well, they still go through an investment committee process. And so we have a separate investment committee that they go through. It's a very structured process that they go through. We're still working with those businesses on the sort of portfolio management side. There's probably co-investment coming alongside as well. So it's all just part and parcel of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis throughout the rest of the year. Yes, it will be a lot busier. We try and avoid holidays at that time of year. You know, it's those kind of things that we need to do to manage it. But yeah, we just know it's busier. We try and avoid holidays, and we get on with it. And there'll be other things that might slip in terms of, you know, perhaps we need to put our marketing off until April so that we, you know, so it's just balancing everything.
Yeah. And I'd probably ask, of the businesses you invest in at SEIS stage, is it 50%, 60%, 70% then get EIS investment, or is it a lot lower?
No, so we're probably talking about 30%, 35%. We'll get the final funding. But it's but you know, again, we have criteria for making sure, because these are different investors, so we have to make sure that when we're investing, it's all investing you know, in accordance with our IM, in accordance with all the rules. So so we're not just chucking money in afterwards. It's there has to be a good growth story for it. It's
Actually, you're UK focused. Has the traditional bent been towards investing in London based and Southeast based companies, or have you always been quite, you know, regionally diverse? Because obviously we know there's huge growth in the north and the southwest, and well, all over actually the UK, with great founders. Where are you on that?
So at last count, 60% of our companies were invested outside of London. So as much as we have a London office, we've always been sort of quite virtually based. We've got base in London. It makes it a lot easier, but it also makes it quite easy when we go elsewhere. We've held review panels. So as part of our process, we have a review panel. We've held those outside of London on many occasions. So, you know, if we get a group of companies in a different region, we'll happily go out there. That's not a problem. So yeah, 60% are outside, but there is more opportunity, I would say, for investing outside of London now. You're seeing more accelerators, you're seeing more hubs in sort of cities outside of London. So what we do is we just try and keep in contact with as many of those hubs outside of London to make sure that people know that we're open for investment, because I don't think it's the fact that people VCs only want to invest where they're based, especially in this day and age. It's just more getting access to those. So it's very much down to trying to get involved as much as possible with the sort of regions.
Something that's come across to me throughout the podcast is this element of diversification, right? And from my perspective, it seems like you guys are probably the most diversified early stage investor out there. Sector, industry, location, demographics, even the stage of the companies, because you reinvest as well. Was that always part of the strategy? And if it wasn't, when did it kind of emerge as a theme for you guys?
I think, yes. In term, it wasn't part of the strategy, and I would say it's probably not, core to the strategy now. I would say that's who we at Jenson are. So if you were talking about strategies, the primary strategy is going out, investing in early stage businesses, sector agnostic, and having a set of criteria with that. The secondary sort of thesis of it is who Jenson is, and our underlying ethos for investing. And that's why we became a B Corp at the end of the day, is because we wanted to demonstrate that we as a firm, as an employer, as a set of people, these are the things that we believe in, so that then sort of overlays into that investment strategy. But that is, I wouldn't say it's our core to our investment strategy. Does that make sense?
It's quite interesting, because obviously early stage investing is risky, and diversification is the only free lunch you get in investing, right? So it's quite interesting that, the diversification is so widespread across the portfolio. I mean, you must have seen that sort of pay off during COVID as well, where some of the businesses would have, through that diversification, would have been, seeing a huge COVID bump, right, and that sort of thing as well.
What do you mean a huge?
So COVID bump, as in they sort of accelerated their growth through COVID.
They were right for the environment during COVID.
Yeah.
In terms of, yeah, it's not something. I mean, to be fair, through COVID, we were very much working with our portfolio businesses at that point. That was really our key focus at that point. There was a lot of, uncertainty. Nobody knew what was going on. So, our key focus was working with those portfolio companies, making sure they knew where they could get help, making sure that they were fine. From a mental health perspective, it was really, really tough for a lot of people. So, there were a lot of businesses that thrived through that, and a lot of businesses that either had to hibernate. We didn't see a huge amount that failed. In actual fact, I'm trying to think of one that did, because I'm sure there must have been, that was a cause of COVID.
That's kind of what I mean, having such a diverse portfolio, because one of the things that we've seen is that VC is getting more and more specialized rather than generalist, but then you kind of lose out on that diversification, which lowers your overall risk.
Hedge yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
Diversification. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's good.
But again, I bring that back to it being an early stage environment, because I think early stage businesses have got they can be more agile in that kind of environment as well.
Yeah.
So that in itself makes it slightly different to a later stage and a sector focus and
exactly.
And hear the passion, Sarah.
Well, that's good, because I am very passionate.
No, and it's great that you're doing so well. I've really enjoyed catching up and having this opportunity to talk more. One thing we always do is just sort of ask our guests outside of Jenson, any hobbies, any particular interests that people wouldn't imagine that you do. Do you go horse riding? Do
you have any free time?
Yeah. You do any, what's on the agenda?
So what do I do in my spare time? Play the clarinet. A lot of people don't know that.
Our previous guest is trombone enthusiast, trombonist. So.
Yes, we had someone who was a trombonist recently. So clarinet. Wow.
Clarinet, yeah. It was something that I did when I was at school, and I left it for about, 20 odd years. And then I found my old clarinet.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it's, I suppose, a bit of mindfulness, isn't it? It takes you off somewhere completely different.
Yeah, what we need to do occasionally. Yeah, great. All right, lovely. Well, look, thanks. Anthony, any more questions from you before we go?
No. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, no, it's been really good.
I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I have. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Hopefully see you face to face next time. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Thanks ever so much, both of you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.